So I've been on this wild journey. It's, why I've been learning about monetary policy and decentralized governance. There is like a 180-degree other thing happening on the spiritual plane where there's just these constant transmissions about getting very clear about what's happening and making sure that what you think is the past is what the past really is, because there's this whole science fiction lure, and it talks about how memories can be implanted into the consciousness. So again, the synopsis here is that a person having implanted memories will go on living a life that wasn't exactly what they think it is. And when you ask yourself, hey, is that just science fiction? It would seem like a science fiction thing, but what if the history that you think you know about is not exactly the history that actually occurred? It would be like a rug pull to the entire reality. And I'm telling you, at a certain point, this entire reality is going to get rug pulled, not just from the metaphysical realm existing. That is one of them. Because, all of a sudden you could see what's really here. It would definitely awaken things. However, I actually think that it would first take place in clarity of the actual past and what took place. The reason why this will be important is because it would be like the missing link for all of us, literally. It would almost be like we would have no past that was really authentic. And if we don't have an authentic past, then it basically leads us into what's called a hybrid human. A hybrid human functions on artificial intelligence. This artificial intelligence is created by them thinking that they know what they're talking about based on something that is not the truth. So what then is created is somewhat of a false reality. I can guarantee you 100% that most of the realities that many people are in are false, because they're memories that have been implanted in them, to them thinking this is who did this is who created this is where this is what this is called. All of those dynamics have been tampered with and played with. So I first began with just understanding the processes of development, right? That's what we're going to go through here, is the process of development for consciousness as it's moving through. In the barbarian state of consciousness, there is absolutely no language. This is what should be noted the most, that a barbarian does not have a written language. And without a written language, you cannot structure a society. Why? Because a society in itself is a world. The worlds of society are created through words, as we've come to discover that there must be a linguistic structure there in order to create this society. And that structure that we're traveling through is a structure of memories. Now, the memories are so strong, like, some of us that have lost someone, the memories of that person is still strong. So we understand that energy is the true component and the true dynamic of how we function. But what I need to explain to you is, as a barbarian, none of that makes sense, because that is the world of words. And as a barbarian, you're more tuned to your archetypical passion. And this is what I need to explain. Again, it's just a matter of math, but it makes sense that at some point, maybe you'd only get like 8 beings, 9 beings. Who cares what the number is? Before you got to 1, you would get like a series of archetypical beings. We know of this now as enealogy. But let's say the main driver within these segmentations of beings is that they're completely different. It's almost like they cannot contain even an essence of what the other one contains, or maybe only just an essence of what the other contains, while everything else being completely different. So this would almost even seem like there was even a collision or a warfare or a conflict going on between these archetypes. it also would kind of exist with them the most because they're the closest to when you eventually leave the realm of conflict, which I'm encouraging everyone to venture out and to explore someday, if you have not already, because it's lovely. And what we're doing now is we're going to be very clear about exactly what's going on in the matrix, because I feel like personally, even now, it's trying to come out the truths, but within 10 to 15 years, things going in this direction, what is really the truth about this planet will never even be known. It won't even be talked about. The whole spiritual context of things and how things work may not even be in play if it continues in this direction. But if we have anything to do with it, there will be embassies all across the world that when people are ready to know the truth, they can get the truth. Because the only problem that we're really dealing with right now, the hack to the reality, because somebody said, well, with all this power and all this, why is this happening? It's because, see, people have always been acting wild. And I'm going to show you that tonight. But the thing was, when you were ready to actually really be civilized, to really overwhelm or overthrow your passions, you could walk in and know yourself through a system, a school. Now, that school is religion. And instead of the person who's serious about now getting themselves together, actually really coming into their, what would be called like their manhood or their womanhood by understanding the other worlds and now going into the real connection with themselves, they're turned over to an evangel or an intercessor or basically a parasite. So I want to make this very clear, because you'll see so much power in what I'm telling you. I'm going to talk to you about a lot of power today. Then you're going to wonder, well, with all that power, what happened? How did it all melt down? And I'm telling you, it's just a diversion of light. If a person starts worshiping and tuning in and calling upon something that they cannot identify as themselves until they merge with it, then the realm of what can happen to that person is like to your wildest dreams and nightmares. This is what you got to understand, that just like the horror is a big thing here, I personally don't watch horror. When I was younger, for some reason, they had the horror on all the time. Like the other kids was watching it, and that meant that you were an older kid if you can watch these kind of movies. And some of the images that you see, you never are able to get out of your mind again. So the reality is, though, is that we're living in a reality that's not all koala bears and cotton candy. And this is where we have to also be, which is where our awareness also has to come in at, because that's like the mature part of the realm. Like what your great, 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 great grandfathers and great, 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 great grandmothers, et cetera, had to endure. Also, when we're saying them, we're talking about you. I can't tell you enough that I'm seeing all the time real signals that this is a process that this soul, if you may, has been going through. Meaning that I noticed that there's certain things that, let's say that I naturally do that would take a lifetime to learn how to do. Let's say that also for the creatives that are out there. The way that they are able to draw, it would take like lifetimes to learn how to do that. And we're going to get around with the playing with time here in a little bit later in this combo, but it's to realize that we're actually timeless beings. So I don't got time to be sitting around here playing color games and emotional beef, psychological beefs, psychological problems, hangups. Didn't have a mommy, didn't have a daddy, grew up in a bad neighborhood, never been punished. All those different subsets and subcategories. That's what Freud and Jung were playing around with all the time, trying to figure out how they're going to psychoanalyze the human mind to be able to bring it into some level of balance from all of the damage that has gone through in the experience, right? So for me, even seeing anywhere near light from all of that, I'm going to go all the way. And so notice how every society structure that you're in, it's always like anti another society. And that's funny how that came in, because it's not even written here in my notes, but it was supposed to be said. Like, notice how in the gangs, right? It's like, what's up? So Crips, they call them cuz. What's up, cuz? That's as in cousin. The bloods, what's up, blood? That's as in blood, right? What's up, folk? As in family. What's up, neighborhood? As in this is the group. Notice how if you look at all of the gangs, their names are always symbolic to people who should be together, but they fight. They fight each other. And I realize that, first of all, that's the first context to as you come into the layer, which is, this vibrational frequency of the world about this conflict, is the conflict starts in the family. So thus, when you do go to the ancient scriptures, like especially the commanding scriptures, it kind of breaks out as kind of like a family fight between the archetypes. So what I'm telling you is that when you're able to merge those forces, that's what's going to take you into the great beyond. And I can even dictate exactly how that process would occur tonight. So as I said before, now in the barbarian's mind, the barbarian as it's being explained is more of an animalistic structure. It's a structure that's moving on instinct. So it's not that they don't have a world. It's more like they have a realm. And that realm is the state of the mind of the barbarian, if you may. And these barbarians are the primordial aspects of the entire reality as in their animalistic stage. Okay. So and what makes them this barbarian? Because they lack reason. They don't actually have a written language. Why is the written language important? Because it's the stars. And what the stars give you the ability to do is to track your course, to chart your course. Barbarians can't track their course. They can't chart their course. Many of the primordial animalistic energies, they cannot chart courses or track courses. They lack reason. It's not that they don't have a world, they have a realm. Okay, and the reason why I need to make this clear is because as we keep going in the future, you're going to start noticing that there's a difference in what's going on in the worlds. There's what's going on in the worlds, and there's what's going on in the realms, and there's the realms attempting to influence the worlds. And this is the ebb and the flow that you'll be seeing that is played within this subtle game of existence. So as we move forward, we realize that there becomes a point. So now let's look at just a couple of words, okay? Because there's a mythos that starts to come about when the conflicts begin. And the mythos is really around that how do you defeat something immortal? How do you defeat something immortal? Remember, if there's a conflict, okay, and in a conflict, the conflict means somebody is literally trying to destroy you, to obliterate you, to end everything about how you are and what you are. That's the struggle that is going on behind the scenes. That's why I was saying before, it's like every intention that we set out to do, there's almost this equal vibration that counteracts that so that nothing happens. You don't fail and you don't win. This is what the construct of this time frame that we're in, which is more like stasis. The reason, like if the things that you thought of all the time happen right away, man, I don't know if that would be beneficial or deadly dangerous. Only you know. But even I know sometimes I've wandered off in thought. That's why they say the idle mind is the devil's workshop, where sometimes you'll just not be thinking and then your mind just will start thinking about something else. And as I said, it's creatively destructive too. Sometimes when you let it wander, it goes right to the things that you don't even want to, it'll magnetize right to the things that you don't want to be connected to inside of your thought. So if everything that we thought manifested right away, man, it'd be a disaster. So there's got to be this time lag thing. And I'm telling you that time lag thing is the framework that the cultist plays in. Because there has to become this awareness of, kind of like how that would happen for you if what you said didn't really manifest. If your heart, your mind, and your thoughts didn't connect with what you really said. And even deeper, as we're pointing out, if the hemispheres of your brain weren't synchronized with each other properly to where your right brain is really communicating with your left brain and they understand that their connection. To check that when you go into your dream, can you make sense of what's going on in your dream? Because your dream is your left brain and your right brain attempting to communicate with each other. So if none of that pans out, none of that makes any sense, it's because they have not synchronized. And so moving forward, now we just have to flip the script completely because we realize that the world went headlong into battle, conflict. And that brings in certain types of energies, and those types of energies create this, like the space to what we're living in now. So if we're not familiar with those energies, then there's no way for us really to diffuse them. So let's get it understood here. Cannibal, okay? This word is extremely interesting because it actually contains can or Cain, and it also contains Baal, which was the Lord, as the term is. A Baal or a Baalim is a Lord. But for us, this means a person eating themselves, a person that will eat another person. And right away, we're like, okay, yeah, that's too crazy for me. I'm not into this. But then they was always like, oh, those Aborigines, they're cannibals, right? So they blame the cannibal on everybody else. But what is this really about? And what I would encourage you to see is this on a metaphysical level of how many metaphysical cannibals we're dealing with in this reality right now. Meaning that it seems like everything that you do, somebody just wants to fight against you about it, even hurt you about it, talk bad about you about it. But we're all connected. But we're all fighting each other. So isn't the root of cannibalism when you try to fight, destroy, or eat or hurt your own kind? So it seems like to me, the biggest game is the skin game, first of all. Like the first game they're going to want to play is they're going to change the skin colors. Because once they get that happening, there can be lots of fights. As everybody follows in the realm of falsehood, of thinking that they understand the truth. When the truth is so deep, because of the technologies that we're dealing with, you were already initiated into a certain level of awareness. Let me show you this. So in the ancient text, it says the reason why you know that the humans are connected to the gods is that when you cut them, the cut heals. And this is the sign of their immortality. So I'll say it again. That when you cut yourself or you get hurt, your body heals. And this is the sign that you're a God, right? So this is the power that has to be manipulated, is for you to think that you're not a God because you can regenerate. So now we have to understand what kind of technology can be implemented to make you think that you're getting older, because that's the other confirmation. It's like, well, yeah, I got cut and I healed, but I'm still getting old. Look at me. And then you look into this magic mirror and then you see you here, but then you watching others and they seem to be getting older. And then so you buy into the whole time thing. But I'm going to show you the technology of time, which is the sun, and how it updates what everything's supposed to appear like every single day. But that's not really what it looks like. But let's digress for a minute. Cannibal. Now, Ouroboros, according to the mythos, which is a metaphor for the organism itself, eats its own tail. Okay? So it's a cannibal in itself. And this is why I was like just saying that we got to realize that the only way you get to something different is if you understand the key and core fundamentals to how this one operates, and then just go 180 degrees. And when you see it, it consumes itself. So there started to become this thing amongst the competitions that were rising up with the nations, that so many of the people that were in those nations in those times were aware of their immortality, there needed to be a way to get them to forget that they were immortal, so that basically that you could stop fighting them, if that makes sense. So like if you went to war with a nation, but even after destroying that nation, it was like a hydra and it came back up again because it was immortal. Now you'd be fighting a bigger nation again until you could solve that quarrel. And that's the quarrel that humanity is locked in. They're locked into this prism of a quarrel taking place between vibratory frequencies. And then it's playing out in dramas. And what you have the opportunity to do is you have the opportunity to pull back off of it and see, wait a minute, this is like a cannibalistic system. Everybody want to make fun of each other. Everybody want to say who the best one is. We all hate these folks out here fighting, bombing each other. They got the same damn last names. How is all of this going on? And I'm going to take you again behind the scenes to the spiritual framework here in a minute, but just peep the scene. You got Ouroboros kind of cannibal-like things going on all the time around the reality. So what does the ancient book say about this? What the ancient books were saying is that there became this thing where it's like what you see on the Highlander, that in order to remove somebody from ever coming back into the reality, you had to chop off their head. This is according to the Highlander movies. Also, there was this other thing about having dogs eat the bones of the ancestors to keep the person from coming back into the reality. Now remember, as an immortal, you don't only live in this reality. So there's another reality, but it would be like you would be locked out of getting back into the reality because a procedure was performed of how to stop a person from coming back into the reality. In the ancient mythos, it was to cut off its head or to have dogs eat its bones, okay? So it appears to me, after deep esoteric meditation, after the awareness that, and this is a whole nother session that I have to come through with the evidence, but it's there, but that King George, King Charles, King James, and George Washington were what you would call melanated. And I'm gonna explain this. So basically that they are quote unquote what you would call black, but actually considered as white. Why? Because anybody in this time that came over from Europe, Ireland, or Scotland to what you're calling right now North America was classified in the documents as white, no matter what their skin tone was. Because you had a bunch of black Irish, black Scottish, and this is why you get pyramids inside of Ireland. You see how they got all the pyramids and all this Egyptian lore out in Ireland, and they're like, where did this come from? Oh, the Queen Cleopatra came here and then she set up a dime. So they'll give you all of the, hey, let's tell you a fairy tale, but they're not coming to the specifics about what the hell is going on. Why is it necessary to erase people from history? What was going on? And so we find out that basically so George Washington, as you know, was a Freemason. They show you that he was a Freemason and he was pledged to the King of Britain. However, something goes on around this time where there's a complete mutiny from the King of Britain, because the King of Britain he gets his head chopped off. And because there can't be another king, because there's no actual lineage of the king, then only the protector of the realm, which is named Cromwell, only the protector of the realm is the one protecting Britain, France, Ireland, and Wales. Okay, so this is a longer story, but a story about that in history, it's showing the secret societies as we know them, the brotherhoods and the sisterhoods, were all synchronized under one culture only until about roughly 200 to 300 years ago. And the reason why this is important is because the culture that our ancestors were initiated into was a culture that explained to you what your purpose was on earth and then unlocked your power so that you can go beyond. In fact, that the whole purpose of earth was just that. It was just basically a training ground for the afterlife. And our ancestors used it as a training ground for the afterlife. But there are many beings that have been brought forth in this training ground. So, because you got to remember, if we go back to, let's say, those original 8, let's say we don't even go back that far. We go back to some of the more primordial ancestors. Actually, let's just go back to the mother and her first child. The mother and her first child, because we have stories about that in ancient lore. Imagine the power of the first mother and the first child. Now they're not like any of the civilization, colonialization, mental screw, any of that is not present. But something happens with the son where he has to go to the underworld. Okay, that's the story of Tammuz and his mother Inanna, right? That because Tammuz is still a physical being, even though his mother is a goddess who's birthed him, when he gets to a certain age, he must die according to this lore. And he goes to the netherworld and his mother comes and gets him. The reason why I wanted to make sure that you zoom in on that is so that you understand the passion of what is actually coming to expunge you from the matrix, if you may. It's a mother who wouldn't allow her child to be lost in the netherworld. Are we clear here? It's just like, okay, so let me just make sure you understand that you're clear, because if you're not clear here, none of this stuff that I'm going to explain to you in a moment is going to make sense. Because it's going to seem like the shit's so thick and so deep. I told you it had to be wild. I'm even trying to get grips of it right now. It had to be so thick and so deep that this is the truth that nobody can handle. This is what they don't want to talk about, but you can go to the ship logs. So what happens? George Washington, 6'2", swarthy or black man, is now in a full-scale war, spiritual war even, with the protector of Britain, and he's had who he's pledged his allegiance to, the king. His his head is chopped off. So they're fleeing to create these colonies in what was then what you're calling North America. They're fleeing to create these colonies in a place that's already fully populated with what you're calling our Aboriginal tribes. Many of them also Freemasons and having lodges. What is Freemason? What is a lodge? It's basically a armory. It's a what would you call Michelle would be good at this, but it's an embattlement inside a foreign territory. It's a fortress inside of a foreign territory. So what you would see is that Masonic lodges and agreements and treaties was going all over the world, because those were the actual attachment offices to the king's empire. But I'm telling you, those kings, those Germans even, were all black. But now this is where it gets interesting. They're black because their skin is dark, but if you look at them, they look white. And there's a mystery here. Nobody can seem to crack it that even knows about it. It's like how you see Dravidians. They got blue eyes and blonde hair and black skin. What's going on? Nobody can answer this question. I believe I've found the answer to this question. I have to go back just a little bit further here to expunge all of this, but I'm going to show you how it became a certain point that, just like you see even maybe in adrenochrome now, but to put melanin into your system from silver and other things was like, it became the thing, because everybody in those societies knew that the power was coming from the sun. And the more that you could interface with the sun, with elements inside of your body, which also turned your skin dark or tan, which meant serpent, the more that you could interface into this regenerative energy, because more specifically, the skin is the serpent part of our body. It's called the derma or the dream. Okay. So the skin is the largest organ in the body. Not the heart, not when you take all the skin and put it into a pile. It's the largest organ in the body, but it's the one that's least talked about. Also, the skin, you can tell the personality, as I mentioned, of the skin. It covers everything. So you don't know about all the other organs. You just know about the skin, because the skin is like what they call the shining serpent, right? Like it's the prideful shining serpent, the skin of the coat of colors. That's your aura, everybody. But it was a practice, just like we're eating certain elements now, supplements now, that you should consume things that allow you to interface with the sun. And that was the secrets within the secret societies. And this is why you had even, again, Dravidians, Bohemians, everybody, as Benjamin Franklin said, Russians, Germans of a swarthy complexion, meaning of a darker skin tone. So you're talking about an entire, that's what I'm saying, all these brotherhoods, they were interfaced with the sun, and the sun is clearly the great serpent, or the one that can heal itself. Because remember, this gets us into the Christianity thing, where Jesus can heal himself from things. The serpent, the Nehushtan, can heal itself. So for a multi-billionaire, one who controls the world, what are you worried about? Shit, when we gonna die? Because that's when we're gonna leave all this money. So for men that were initiated, that was what they got initiated for. That's the time that you're done in your life trying to chase the girls, trying to create the companies. That's why even in the Kabbalah, they don't initiate until after 40, because they're like, man, this guy, he's going to say he wants to be in, and then he's going to tell all the secrets, and he hasn't really even seen life yet. Why will we initiate him and bring him in? There has to be things that happen to you. You need the experience of life to occur for then you to say, look, I'm just trying to figure out what's going to happen to my soul. And then, as I said before, then when you had that question, I don't care what condition you were in, there was a place that you could see from anywhere in the world. That's that Great Pyramid. It's, what is it, 1/46 of the scale of the world. It was completely coated and with glyphs in it, which I'm going to explain what those glyphs did. But there was basically a place that you go. You want to know what's happening? Go there. And the problem is now the hack is when you want to know what's happening, they send you to a man, a mere mortal that bleeds, that has no history and no real story, because that history and story, it was completely plagiarized. It belongs to a whole different culture. It was about even something totally different. It was about a mother retrieving her son from the underworld. And now we're seeming to be right into that again, because that's the first wave, or what they call the first lens. Everything is going to be only a replica of the first wave or the first lens. I don't care where you're at in time. So what happens is that that's why this is something for all of us. It's something that we can all adapt, but you need to understand the history and the herstory.
It was beyond majestic, because even a postcard doesn't do it credit, you know. So to see it in person and to soak into it, that's the other thing. It's not just like a tourist guide thing where you just go, you take a picture. I mean, we sat in the waterfall, we closed out in the waterfall, we, closed the honoring in the waterfall. And so there's also this playfulness that comes out when people have the opportunity, as Tribe had, to just really connect in those kind of spaces that are so much more overpowering in relation to how vibrant and how harmonized those frequencies are. So you get a chance to just boil it off even more by going into these spaces and sharing something that really will be on the mind and on the consciousness for years to come. Yeah, truly.
So this is your first time in the jungle?
This is my first time in the jungle.
How was your experience so far?
I just got here. And I don't like to be filmed.
Some of these notions that you can't meet people on virtual platforms or on computers and have any real connection with them are absolutely false. Because there were so many people that when you walked up, you just felt like, damn, man, and you were able to go right with them where you left off last in their last interaction with them. So I definitely felt from the entire venture that I had only connected with family that I had already loved so much and had already built a relationship with. And I saw so many people experiencing, and so many parts of the tribe experiencing that same thing.